Go on Facebook Live right here. Hey, everybody. It's Nathan and Bob.
Hey, everybody.
So here's the deal, everybody. This is the 100th episode. I'm going to type that in. This is our 100th episode of Be The Talk podcast. And I wanted to give you a little bit more information on the backstory, and I wanted to bring on Bob because Bob is my secret weapon. So he's been, Bob is
referred to a lot of things, but I don't know about secret weapon.
He's the secret weapon, baby, because he actually hears when I'm saying stuff that I don't mean to say, and so he has heard several things coming out of kind of my subconscious that he then can notice it, and then he can assassinate it, and he can let me know about it, and it's actually saved me weeks and even months. And as a result of partnering up with coaching and with other people that can help you, in this situation, we're at 100 episodes, I believe, next Wednesday. So
I remember when this was just an idea.
Yeah, how about it? So, so in a minute, we're going to start this, and we will take any questions that anybody has. I've seen you, Jack. I've seen you, Barb. Anybody that has questions for Bob or anything else, we'll take those questions after the segment is over, and that's what we'll do. Now, Bob knows I am having some little audio issues. So can you describe what's going on? Am I kind of starting to fade down? What's it like on your end?
No, you sound good right now.
I sound good.
Sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Hey, Barbara Gustafson.
Woohoo!
Yeah,
Barbara,
right.
one of my favorite folks.
Yeah,
absolutely.
How about it? Okay. So what we're not going to do, we're not going to go completely into the full gory backstory of everything,
Oh, come on. Really?
Not going to do that today. But, suffice it to say, I had a pivot point about 6 months back, and I realized through some, really a very unique profile that Bob had access to. And one of the things that he had done is reach out to me, and he once we agreed to jump into this thing, and maybe that's a good thing for conversation as well. But he gave me this profile, which was a lot more in depth than anything that I saw, and really it helped me understand what was really going on. And this had been a cycle and a recurring pattern going on. You know what? I think that might be a good place to start, Bob, in a minute. So I'm going to hit the recorder here. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, sounds great.
And I love it because it was a mentorship call for a different program. So Bob, I love if you start right there, that it was on another mentorship call, and then you kind of apologize. I'm like, don't apologize. I think this was the way that it was supposed to happen. So I'm going to set this up in a minute. Those of you that have questions, feel free to comment and ask some questions. But after we record this portion, then we'll take the questions with Bob, and we'll probably go for, a good 10, 20 minutes on this. We may go for more, but this may be some bonus content. Bob, what is your hard stop? Just so that I know. I want to respect your time.
Yeah, so I've got hard stop at probably 4:30 my time. Mountain time. Okay, so what? Yep, so about an hour. We got about an hour.
So I wanted to do a lot less than that, but we this will be good.
Looking at some of the folks that are coming on, I don't know, man. This is going to be pretty fun.
Yeah, this will get juicy. I think this is going to be Barbara Lee. Oh my gosh! All right, I'm going to get this all out of our system here. This is going to be hard not to get distracted with all the comments of our friends here. So, and, everybody's leaning in because they're like, what the bleepity bleep has been going on with Nathan the last 6 months? Why is he falling off the planet? What's up with this little podcast thing, call out logo that he has right here? What's been going on? So we're going to let you know. All right, we're going to be live in 3, 2. We are live with my coach, Bob Kittridge. Bob, are you ready to talk?
I am. You know, it's interesting about the TEDx talk thing. It's always been one of my kind of aspirations, but this is pretty cool too to be on here with you guys.
Yeah, well, hey, and everybody, this is a segment for our 100th celebration podcast episode. You know, when you're doing a 7-day-a-week podcast, doesn't take much more than 3 months to get to this milestone, but I wanted to honor this milestone. And the reason I'm not reading a bio for Bob right now is just because this is just a segment, and I'll give you the bio in the show notes. We're going to have a link to Bob. Now, let me introduce you to Bob. Bob is my coach for the last, I think it's been 2 or 3 or 4 months now. And it keeps getting kind of longer and longer. The way that we schedule things between travel and everything else. I think Bob originally thought this would be like a 2-month deal. It's probably been 4 or 5 months at this point. But Bob has been my coach, and Bob and I have been founding members of a different organization. We've known each other. I know, Bob's wife, and he and I have been, really good friends for really the last 7 years. And, Talk Universe, part of the reason that I'm going into this detail is when you invest in yourself, and this is going to be a theme, when you invest in yourself for the long haul, you're going to find other people who also invested in themselves who can help you as well. And you can help. And part of this is the last thing I'm going to say, but part of the really cool thing when you've been all over, literally, we've been all over the world together. We have changed nations together. We've been in the Caribbean together. We've done really high ticket events together. We've done, freebie events together. We've been everywhere in between. And when you've done enough of these things and invested in enough similar programs and projects, you get a very similar vocabulary and a very similar mindset in terms of, just being able to refer to different programs, books, tools, tips, techniques. And I knew when Bob reached out to me, you're going to hear the story, that I really needed to take him up on this offer because he was reaching out to me one day and I needed some help. And so I bought into it literally, and it's been a powerful, powerful thing. Bob, this is the longest intro I've ever given anybody. I apologize. Over to you for the backstory.
Well, let's step back. Really, the first time for us was in the Caribbean, right? I mean, was an exchange.
Yeah,
and,
really.
We really did not know each other that well. I was trying to think, was that after Guatemala or before? I don't know. It's, those dates.
It was right after.
Yeah.
Right after.
So, I had watched an entire huge transformation with you in Guatemala. We watched you kind of blossom out of a box, to say the least, to be challenged in your status quo. And I just, to be part of that, I was honored. That's the first piece, right? And so, in the Caribbean, we talked about a lot of different stuff on the beach that day. And it was neat to, again, it's that like-minded people coming together. And so when we were on a call together, and know that I reached out to you as a friend first, right? And that's the thing I loved about our relationship, is that when I reached out, it was like, Nathan, how can I help you? And I really got that there was a struggle going on with you. There was a distinct struggle happening. And could I help you? I don't know. But you never know unless you step into that and ask. And the great part I loved about you was that I knew, and I think you knew, that it was okay for you to say yes, and it was okay for you to say no. And that was the great piece about it. So being comfortable to do that and offer what I have as a service, of course, you already said it. You've invested in yourself in a coaching relationship. And so far, I mean, watching you over the last couple months has been amazing to see what we've been able to do to really close that gap between you wanting something but where you were at. And that gap in between it was, I mean, when we started, was pretty huge.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's been the real joy for me is, yes, our time has been strung out more than a quote regular coaching relationship, but you and I both agreed up front that this was not going to be a typical coaching relationship. That it was, and we both knew that, right? We knew the parameters, we knew the guidelines, and that's how I coach. You know, I am not one of those strict, here's my program and we got to stick to it. I'm very much in it for the client and their results. So, you know, when you call me and say, listen, look, I'm still working on stuff. I need to push my thing out one more week. Awesome. Because I know you're working. And I know when you do that, you're not doing it because you're trying to avoid something. You're really doing it because you want to engage at a deeper level, which, again, that's my goal, is to get you to evolve and dig in and move forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, can you go into that whole piece about how do you know? I mean, one of the things for all of us who are coaches. I mean, we're all so many people listening are coaches. Can you go into the whole thing about just investing in oneself, and then once you've made the investment, actually working the program? How do you know when somebody's working the program or not? What makes the difference, and how does that show up as a criteria for you? Just for the benefit of, I mean, some of Talk Universe, many of them have invested in coaches for their talk or for the future talk or just in life, but many have not yet, and maybe they're a little frightened to invest that amount of money, or what they might think is an awful lot of money compared to their potential, but compared to not reaching the potential. What's the criteria for you, and how do you help other people really reach that potential?
Well, you know, and I'll tell you, one of my, what's called driving forces is intentional, right? And so reaching out to you, I knew that there would be a return there. And I don't mean return and i.e. you'd pay me, but really a return. And I was watching somebody that wanted to grow, needed to grow, but yet was stuck. So for me, and I get asked a lot about, oh, will you coach me? Or I'd really love to do this, or but when it comes down to doing it is where people get stuck. That's where people get stuck. And a lot of times they use money as the excuse, but in reality, money is the result of something behind. And it's the lack of that money that keeps them from, quote, investing in themselves and moving forward. So for me, I'm looking for somebody that's, that is really looking to move. And this sounds kind of weird maybe, but the more challenged, the better, right? Because I know that being stuck is the perfect state of mind for change. You can't move forward until you are stuck. That's a turning point for a lot of people. They look at stuck as a bad thing. And in reality, what I know is being stuck is okay. We embrace it. We look at it. We reveal it. We see it. And then we move forward in the coaching relationship to be able to get you, kind of moving forward in that direction where you wanted to go.
Love it. So what I'm going to do, technical pause right now, Bob. You have frozen in the screen. Now, we're going to edit this out of the audio, but your screenshot is frozen. So if you can kind of toggle your video, hopefully we'll get you back. I think it may have been something on my end. There you go. Okay. Now you're frozen in a better looking. Bob looks better than he did. You look better than, it was kind of horrendous. So I had to,
how's that?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Well, yeah, we're just kind of frozen for some reason. So,
interesting. It could be on my side. It's about time for all the kids to get out of school bandwidth here.
Oh, not cool. Okay, not cool.
So let me try it one more time.
We're going to do what we can do, and then again, I've got audio on my end with this loose connection. Everybody at home, I've got a loose connection on my mixer that I have just discovered. My professional mixer that is brand new. So go figure. So what we're going to do, we're just going to keep on with the audio recording and keep going with the Facebook Live because we want to hear the rest of the backstory. So I think a tipping point for me, like like I had said earlier, Bob, so we made the arrangement. You reached out to me. We realized, hey, we know each other way too well. And I realized pretty quickly, hey, Bob is reaching out to you, buddy. This is a legitimate reach out here. You've been friends with this guy for 6-7 years. Take his offer, call him back. And then the first thing, once we worked everything out, you gave me a very in-depth questionnaire assessment that really showed me, and I'm just going to cut right to the chase. A lot of people in Talk Universe, we understand the DISC profile. There are 4 different personalities, and this is just one of many different profiles. But if you've heard of the DISC profile, what Bob's report showed me was that 3 of my aspects of my personality were basically visual proof that the other 3 were ganging up against my D driver or dominant or whatever
That's a great term, ganging up on you.
They were ganging up on me, okay? They were ganging up on my driver, okay? The one that really wanted to not just serve other people and not just make a difference and not just add value, but there was a part of me that really, I'm supposed to be Mr. Rapid Content Creation and all this stuff, and I've been helping so many other people for so many years, and yet at the end of the day, I wasn't doing anything myself. And, at the end of the day now, after 100 episodes, you know what? It's not all pointing back to me. I get to share the content with 100 different people, which is wonderful. But I've also, now the difference is I've also got my own name on it. And now the difference is when I reach out to people, I have something to point back to that people understand a little bit of who I am and what I do, and it makes sense to them. And I see the difference with people simply because I stopped hiding behind only promoting other people at the expense of also promoting myself in a legitimate way. And it all started by looking at my I influencer and my S, slow and steady, and the C, which is the big daddy of, the C is task focus, the conscientious part. So that one was basically whipping the other 2 into shape, and they were they were basically waterboarding my D and all the things that I said that I wanted in life, to be self-directed, to be self-employed, and all the things that I've seen my father model as a self-employed, person, healthcare professional all my life. All the things that I wanted, control over my time, control over my destiny, all of that stuff. It needs to be driven by a driver, or else you're not going to get those things. So that's really where it all started. Love for you, Bob, just take a minute or so and just talk about that, because that was a key piece. And that was really unique that you had that's basically many or none of our mutual friends that I know of have. I mean, I could be wrong about that, but that was something very unique that was a huge driver, really made the difference for me. So please summarize that if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's look at it from an awareness standpoint, right? Even though you wanted to do something. So if we were to think about it, if I had a whiteboard right now and kind of draw, right, there's this circle of what you wanted. And you had a pretty clear vision of what you wanted. But there was this perception that really for you was hidden. And that's what happens, right, is 90 to 95% of our behavior comes out of those hidden perceptions. And so if you kind of look at this, we got a circle on one side that's the want, we got a circle on the other side that's the perception, and then we put this behavior in the middle to try to narrow the gap. And again, what we try to do is the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results, right? And what the assessment that we're associated with, and we absolutely love the assessment system we have, is that if you think about it from a scientific standpoint, it's data-driven and it's different sciences. So really what I'm able to do with this, and what's neat about it is it applies across the board, and I use it in every coaching client, is it shows the different dimensions of who you are. So DISC is only one dimension. That's our behavior. For you, where we found a lot of things kind of that were popping up or holding back or conflict was the driving force piece. And then, of course, when we throw the third dimension in there of emotional intelligence, right, that self-awareness that happens. So now we're starting to get a clearer picture of who you are in the world. And that then becomes the model to then move forward, because we don't know where to go until we know where we're at. And that's what this assessment system, and as a matter of fact, we just went and were trained and certified on the fifth dimension of that assessment, that's basically called axiology, which is how we make our decisions through our values. And you want to talk about some eye-opening stuff. I looked at mine and went, oh my God, right? I mean, so this investing yourself, this piece about growth it never stops, or at least it shouldn't. So I am always doing more to learn about me, because the only way I'm going to help you is if I'm growing also. And that's, if you're looking, and for the folks in Right Talk Nation, is if you're looking for a coach, make sure you're getting a coach that's growing too. And that's where I see some folks that interact with coaches. They're great coaches, but then they kind of, they hit that lid, as John says, right? So they may get you to a certain point, but then because they're at a certain point, they're stopped from helping you. And that's, for us, it's always about growing and learning something new and moving forward.
Well, Bob,
sometimes to the detriment too, right? And you've heard me say this, any strength overextended becomes a weakness, right? So yeah.
All right. Yeah.
There you are. You're back.
Mixer. Absolutely. So, and we've seen that over the last few years. Bob, you and I and several thousand of our friends, we're friends with the number one published leadership authority and author really in history. And we've seen this because we've been kind of in like a time machine the last 7 years. We've been able to be in an environment where up to twice a year, plus now even more things that we can do, our awareness, all of us, no matter if we were in our 50s or 40s or 30s or 20s, but it's like stepping into a time machine wisdom accelerator, and you can tell who's growing. It's funny. You can tell who's investing in themselves, who's applying their investment, because as you said, it's not enough just to spend the money. You've got to invest in yourself, and you've got to confront kind of the stuff in your closet, the inner demons, or whatever it is. The voice of the past. You've got to create like a new persona and step into that and commit to it. So we've been able to tell who's been growing, who hasn't quite been growing, who has had a massive amount of breakthrough. I think as we're talking about this on Facebook Live, I had to laugh because our friend Barbara typed in about being flexible, and that was an obvious allusion to my famous Guatemala speech about being flexible, which we are not going to have time.
We're not going to go into that here.
We're not going to have time to talk about that today. But
that could be a whole other show, Nathan, right? That could be a whole other show.
Yeah, maybe we should do another group show on that. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing because it's not enough just to have a one-time investment. You got to grow and you've got to invest. And that law of sacrifice says that you've got to give up to go up. And we all know that. And you've got to also give up to be able to grow up. And money doesn't alone do the trick. You can't just throw money in a problem. You've got to commit. And so we've been able to see who's been growing, who hasn't been growing, and really just the fact that you didn't drop me as a coaching client was probably a good move, and for me to know that I'm doing a fair amount of job, a good job being able to grow myself, because that's always an issue for any growing coach is really guarding their not a portfolio, but their clientele, and making sure that they're only working with people that are growing so that they stay sharp. So so it's been pretty amazing in terms of that. Anything that you'd like to say in response to that, Bob?
Well, that's that. And our mentor teaches the law of gestation, right? Everything has a gestation period, whether that's a human, an elephant, or an idea, right? And that's the neat part is the awareness of that happening. And again, I think that's where people get stuck because they get stuck. They want it faster, but yet there's a gestation period that has to happen. For you, I've seen this like it's almost like we've poured the water and fertilizer on now and you're blooming like crazy, right? It's, what is it? The Chinese bamboo tree, takes how many years before it ever breaks the ground. And then after that, it grows at an astronomical rate. Every person is different. And that's the power of the coaching process that I use is to understand that every client is unique and different. So what I'm doing with you is different than what I'm doing with another client. And again, that's where I see some coaches is they pretty much have coach in a box and, they follow the same process for every, and what was neat about that is right up front, you said, right? Look, Bob, I understand the coaching process and we're probably not going to follow it. I went right on because I knew for you that process was not going to work.
Yeah.
Right? One, you knew the process, and two, to try to take you through that, we had to go somewhere different. Right? We had to go somewhere different, and that's what we did, and it worked. I think it worked anyway, and it still is.
Well, it's worked, and the powerful thing is because you were, you were flexible. I think that's the word of the day, flexible. That's like the word of my life now for the last 5 years, I think. But because you were flexible with that and we're able to sync and track and sometimes I feel like we get like 2 or 3 coaching sessions worth done in one session just because we're tracking and you're willing to leapfrog me to, and take it to kind of a higher level and I'm able to track that. So, and again, that doesn't happen. I mean, that's very unusual and you could never get that except that you and I, we could probably quickly get to from one hand to two hands, if not beyond the fingers of two hands in terms of the primary mentors and then the secondary mentors who we've invested in programs with. I bet we could probably get up to two hands or even beyond the fingers of two hands.
Yep. And again, the neat part about that, and I didn't start like this either as a coach. Right. This is my investing in my development. And it's practice. And I love what you said about, in the fire service, we used to have a term. It was called Semper Gumby, right? Flexibly rigid. So you have to have a process, which absolutely we need to follow. And we have been, but we need to be flexible in the process. Right. And one of the things I learned this last week in this training was if you think about that, that's really a systemic value. Is following the process is a systemic value. Mm-hmm. Some people have got to operate through that systemic value. Others, right, we've got to go straight to the intrinsic. We've got to be able to tie into the people and the emotion and the feeling right away. So it really is being able as a coach to be to say this, I don't want to say this in a way that, makes me sound like, ooh, look at Bob, but you do have to be flexible to be good, to be able to get the results that are needed for the client.
For sure. All right. Well, this has been really fun, be able to talk about everything. Let's go right back to the podcast because you've referred some excellent guests to the podcast, and I've been able to interview several of them. So thank you for doing that, Bob. What's been your favorite interview so far?
I'll tell you, and of course, right, Angela Klocky, she is not only my Toastmaster friend, I've watched her develop from somebody that stood in front of the room and couldn't let go of the lectern and actually, and she talks about that in her, is that, her first speech at Toastmasters, she ran out of the room. She was, and I was listening to Jenny Schall, in your podcast with Jenny and how when she said she got on stage and she didn't even make it to stage, right? And her first inclination was run as fast as you can. And I remember Angela was that girl. She had a story to tell. She was amazing in the story to tell, but yet she was scared to death. And to watch her now on that TEDx stage telling her story, and she just did a speech in our Toastmaster group the other day of her story of TEDx. So she's now moved past, and now telling the story of telling the story, right? So that definitely, and I'll tell you, the two other ones I just love are Jenny Shell. One, she's from Colorado, right? Colorado Springs,
Yep.
and right. But just her story, right, of where she grew up. And you said something, you asked her a question in there about how did you go the way you did? And I don't remember how you worded it versus, she could have went to the negative. She could have went to that side of it, of everything she encountered due to her parents or her mom. And many people do. I'm one of those. For many of my early years, I blamed everything on my parents. Every mistake I made, my life was horrible. I mean, that was my parents' fault. Until I realized that I was this creative being that really I created most of it myself, which I didn't like, right? And then the other one was Dave Blanchard. I'll tell you, his thing on, the vision and where we as entrepreneurs fall into this vision trap because we get that, that amygdala hijack, right? We get the feelings, the emotion, take control, and away we go down this path. And that's part of that emotional intelligence piece that we work with, is understanding that self-awareness piece. So those are probably, along with Angela's, but those two are two of my favorite podcasts so far.
Well, that's great. I was looking up my little list of episodes. So Angela Clockey's is episode 31, which is absolutely excellent. You can also listen to Jenny Shell. That is number 86. And Dave Blanchard was the one immediately before Jenny's 85. So just outstanding, all three of them. Now, Dave Blanchard is CEO of the Og Mandino Group. And so he is basically breathing new life on top of the greatest salesman in the world and some of the other Og Mandino published classics, really, and they're not that old. I think it was published in the late 60s or maybe even later than that,
right.
But it sold 25 million copies, so it's a mega business bestseller. And what Dave has laid on top of that foundation is absolutely mind-boggling. So you want to check out all those episodes. Bob, I want to thank you for just taking the time out of your busy schedule. Where can people find you, first of all?
Absolutely. So our website is www.kittridgeconnection.com, kittridgeconnection.com, or they can just send me an email, bob@kittridgeconnection.com.
And what's your final word of advice for Talk Universe today?
I love what you said. If you've taken the steps to do a TEDx speech, or if you're thinking about it, right? And I'll come clean, my TEDx speech was not accepted. And Angela and I actually auditioned at the same time. And, she felt really bad that she got accepted and I didn't. And for me, I didn't, right? I felt really good about it. And that was, to watch her progress through. So, like Nathan said, invest in a coach. Maybe it's a speaking coach, but I'll tell you what I found. And I've got a lady right now that's moving through the process of Toastmasters that I'm coaching, is that it has nothing to do with standing in front of the room and speaking. It has nothing to do with speaking techniques. It has nothing to do with body movement. It has everything to do who we believe we are. And that's the power of where coaching really does come into play.
Bob, thanks for coming on the show and speaking and being able to share your wisdom with Talk Universe today.
Awesome. Very honored. You know that. Always there to serve you, brother.
All right. That was some good bonus footage.
Yeah, that was good.
Footage.
And I'm watching the feed. We got some good folks on there, too.
We got all our buddies. This is like
I don't know why I froze up, but oh well.
Well, go figure. So if you want to ask Bob a question about Nathan and all of the stuff in his closet and and the backstory stuff that we didn't record, just go ahead and type in a question, and we're going to hang on for another minute or so. Yeah, this is great. This is keeping me on my toes here because it's a little outside of our normal framework, as well as this blasted mixer is going dead on me.
Now I'm going to challenge you on this, Nathan. I'm going to challenge you. How a year ago, how would you have handled the mixer?
Yeah, well,
right? I mean, you want to be right. Look at the growth, and I'm just going to acknowledge you where you've come from in a year. A year ago, you would not have handled this the way that you're handling it today. I mean, so kudos to you. Kudos to you.
Well, thank you very much. But it's and part of it is just knowing how to work the board a little bit with that. It is annoying, and I am a little bit. I could be embarrassed just because I'm part of the brand is to have high end, reasonably high end audio quality and all of that. So it's but it's something that I just noticed this morning. So go figure.
Yeah, well, that's all right. It all worked out. It'll come out great, except of course videos froze, but at least I don't.
That's on you, Bob.
Face, right?
I tried to. When you see some of the screen freezes, you're going to be happy I said something. So
Let's
go
see.
figure.
We'll refresh one more time here to see if.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Barbara is asking, what's the name of the coaching program on axiology and dimension? So if that's something that you'd like to share, or you can private message Barbara, or feel free to share, or neither. That's a question being asked.
Yeah. So it's through early on in our journey, my wife and I, Nancy and I's journey, we knew we needed some tools. We knew we needed tool sets. And so we found a company called Target Training International, TTI. And, it's DISC, of course. But what we find is that, again, DISC is limited on some, you can't get deeper into the person like we've done with you without some of the other dimensions on who we are. So what I love about it is it's science-based, it's that kind of thing. And that's where the axiology is actually what I call a science of values, value-based decision making. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, Barbara says we never even noticed there was a mixer issue. Well, you did, because what's going on is there's some kind of button that needs to be toggled, and at some point I don't hear myself in the microphone anymore. So then I've been reaching over off the screen like stage left and hitting that thing like crazy and keeping her going. So I think
it worked good. Well, I don't think there was one time that it just but you caught it. So good job.
I'm catching it. All right, Bob. Hey, thank you so much for joining us, Bob Kittridge, and then all of you. And I think Bob is tagged, or if he's not already tagged, in the Facebook Live. And you're watching this long after we're done being live, and you want to ask Bob a question, you can feel free to do it in the comment thread, and I know Bob will see it and respond at some point, or you can always reach out directly to him, whichever you prefer to do. And my wife is texting me, why is our dog Cole barking like a lunatic? I've been hearing Cole bark. I don't know if, hopefully, have you been hearing a dog bark? Or
didn't hear a dog bark on my side.
I have a special filter.
A dog barking filter?
Well, it's below a certain threshold. You don't hear like the static or me whacking my desk or whacking the microphone. You don't hear that. So and that's part of my rig.
Isn't that? So I wouldn't even have thought about that. I mean, that's right. I wouldn't even have thought about that. For me, you're going to hear everything that happens in my office.
Yeah. Well, and that's the way that it generally is. I got to give a shout out to the man I first learned these things from, Cliff Ravenscraft. I was in his podcasting A to Z course, I think 5 years ago. And as of 1 year ago, obviously, I still hadn't started a podcast. And the funny backstory is I was at a Ray Edwards copywriting event, and Cliff, I had never met Cliff before, and he was given a keynote, and I got to talk with him, and I just kind of felt the need to kind of fess up, and he just looks at me, no judgment at all, because Cliff is awesome, but he just looks at me. He's like, well, why not? Why haven't you started? and it was it kind of went right in, and it kind of bugged me for for months and months and months. And hey, now we're at episode 100. So thank you, Cliff.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Isn't that a simple question? Well, why not?
Good coaching question, Cliff.
Good coaching question. Well, Nathan, thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks.
All right,
everybody.
take care.
Take care.